Have you ever encountered something quite like this? It's likely that you haven't. It appears as though it's pulled from the scenes of an adventure film, yet this is entirely authentic. The Ethiopian Bible stands out as one of the most enigmatic and debated sacred texts in existence. The nation itself is cloaked in mysteries that defy simple explanations, which is a tale for another occasion. Ethiopia boasts one of the earliest civilizations on the planet and remains the sole African country that avoided colonial domination. This unique historical continuity allows them to trace their ancestry directly back to Ham, a son of Noah, a lineage that even aligns with Jewish historical accounts. However, this video focuses not merely on the country, but on a remarkable artifact it harbors. Ethiopia is custodian to some of the most ancient biblical manuscripts known, predating even the celebrated King James Version. Beyond the 66 books of the King James Bible, the Ethiopian canon includes 88 books, featuring texts absent from other denominations. These manuscripts encompass writings from both the Old and New Testaments, along with texts previously unknown. Intriguingly, these texts have existed in Ethiopia well before the formal introduction of Christianity in the 4th century. Put simply, Christianity was not imposed upon them as it was on many other nations. It was integral to Ethiopia from an early time. Since the 4th century, Ethiopia has embraced Christianity. The Egyptian monk and historian Cosmus Indicoplastus noted in his writings during a mid-6th century visit that Ethiopia was already a Christian nation by that time. He witnessed how Ethiopian leaders welcomed numerous Christian refugees seeking asylum from persecution in regions opposed to Christianity. It is claimed that some Ethiopian tribes have been practicing Christianity for over 3,500 years, which remains a part of Ethiopia's unique historical narrative. Indeed, the oldest continuously operating Christian institution in the world is not the Catholic Church, as many might assume, but the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, known locally as Tewahedo in Ethiopia. Additionally, Ethiopia is home to some of the earliest known illustrated Christian manuscripts, part of the Gospels, written in Ge'ez, an ancient Ethiopian script. This significant find was made in 2010 within a remote monastery perched atop a mountain in Ethiopia. As narrated in the Kebre Nagas, Ethiopia's revered text during the 10th century BC, an Ethiopian monarch and the renowned Queen of Sheba traveled to Jerusalem to seek counsel from the illustrious King Solomon. The canonical scriptures recount their meeting but omit a critical detail. The two monarchs had a son named Menelik. Queen Sheba then returned to Ethiopia with her son, crowning him as the nation's first emperor. This tale, while central to Ethiopian lore, lacks direct historical evidence but reflects the deep historical significance and narrative tradition of the region. In 2012, genetic research on the Ethiopian population revealed traces supporting the historical account of Sheba's voyage to Jerusalem and subsequent events. This data suggests interactions between Ethiopians and ancient Egyptians, Israelis, or Syrians around 3,000 years ago, aligning with the era Sheba is said to have reigned over the kingdom of Sheba, thus further corroborating the narrative. Despite its profound historical significance and authenticity, the Ethiopian Bible is often overlooked and excluded from the recognized canon of sacred texts. Surprisingly, many followers within the same faith remain unaware of its existence. This oversight highlights the extent of efforts made to marginalize and obscure the Ethiopian Bible, leading one to wonder why. To grasp this, we must delve into a brief history lesson. The Bible as we know it has undergone numerous transformations from its original form. Throughout history, various versions and interpretations of the Bible have existed, each offering different perspectives on what the scriptures were believed to convey. Originally penned in Hebrew, the sacred texts were later translated into numerous languages, enriching their accessibility, but also introducing variations. The initial translation from Hebrew to Latin was orchestrated by Saint Jerome, who compiled what is now known as the Vulgate around 400 AD. This version has remained a cornerstone Latin translation of the Bible. It encompassed 27 books in the New Testament and 39 in the Old Testament, collectively referred to at the time as the Hebrew Bible. In the 1st century, numerous accounts of Jesus' life and teachings were penned, many of which strayed from truth. These narratives, akin to fan fiction, portrayed varied and often inaccurate tales of Jesus' life. The challenge was the absence of immediate methods to verify these stories, such as the internet provides today. In an era where misinformation could spread more swiftly than the truth, these fictional accounts began to be accepted as fact, causing significant misrepresentations and confusion. This issue became a significant concern for early Christian church leaders. To address the confusion, key assemblies like the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD and the First Council of Constantinople in 381 AD were convened. These councils were critical in determining which texts should be included in the New Testament. Their criteria stipulated that legitimate scripture must be authored by a direct disciple of Jesus or an eyewitness to his teachings, and must align with the theological framework of existing scriptures. Significant alterations to what is recognized today as the Holy Bible occurred over centuries, but one of the most pivotal may have been during King James's reign. Despite the Vulgate's dominance for half a millennium, numerous differing biblical interpretations persisted, causing unrest about religious inconsistencies. King James was particularly troubled by the myriad of Bible versions that had become prevalent by the 1600s, which spurred religious disputes and undermined monarchical authority. His solution was to commission a new translation that would not only resolve theological disputes, but also consolidate his rule, ensuring that the version would be authoritative and widely accepted. Numerous clergy urged the monarch to revise the existing translations, citing inaccuracies. In response, the king assembled 47 scholars to review the array of Bible translations available at the time. These scholars were organized into 6 separate teams and spent 7 years meticulously reviewing each part of the scripture independently. They adhered to stringent guidelines to eliminate any personal bias and utilized various scholarly tools to produce a Bible that remained faithful to the original text. Upon reviewing the scholars' work, both the clergy and the monarch noted the consistency across the independent efforts. They recognized this uniformity as divine guidance, and thus the revised scripture was sanctioned. In 1611, the King James Bible was released. Thanks to printing technology advancements, it quickly became one of the most widespread versions of the Bible. The revisions in the King James Bible, along with the foundational translation by St. Jerome, known as the Vulgate, led to the exclusion of certain books from the Bible familiar to most Christians today, whereas the Ethiopian Bible preserved these scriptures. Having briefly explored the history of the Bible, we now turn to the pivotal question: why is the Ethiopian Bible not universally recognized? There are myriad reasons for its non-recognition, but a primary factor is its inclusion of additional texts known as pseudepigrapha. Pseudepigrapha are works attributed falsely, either written under a pseudonym or by authors claiming ancient figures as their own. Similar to fan fiction, these texts are generally not accepted as canonical by mainstream Christian traditions. The texts that were excluded or dismissed were those recognized by contemporary scholars and theologians as lacking divine inspiration. Many such texts were penned with questionable motives during and after the time of Jesus. To illustrate the reasoning behind their exclusion, consider a modern analogy. If a book were published today claiming that LeBron James was not an exceptional athlete, it would likely be dismissed and criticized widely because we know the claim to be untrue. However, imagine if this book were to survive into the next 500 years. Future generations might start to believe this erroneous portrayal. Thus, to prevent the propagation of falsehoods, such works are actively excluded from the canon. The Ethiopian Bible itself is divided into 2 sets of canons, the broader and the narrower. Before delving into the specifics, let's define what canon means. A canon is a recognized standard or set of principles that guide judgment. With this definition in mind, consider the standardization seen in technology, governance, and even media channels. The broader, more recognized canon of the Ethiopian Bible contains 81 books, including such texts as the Book of Enoch, the Jubilees, the 3 Maccabean books, the Epistle to Clement, and 4 books of Sinodos, among others. This particular version is the primary focus of the video and is somewhat well known. The narrow canon, however, was closely supervised by Emperor Haile Selassie. He established the narrow version and officially declared it as the definitive and complete version of the Ethiopian Bible. Discussing the reasons behind this could potentially lead to misunderstandings and heated debates in the comments, so I'll refrain from going into depth. However, I encourage you to do some online research on Emperor Haile Selassie to discover the underlying truths for yourself. The narrow canon lacks certain scriptures present in the broader version, containing only 72 books. In contrast, the broader canon includes all the texts found in the narrow canon and additional ones, yet it hasn't been reprinted since the early 20th century. It's evident that even within its own versions, the Ethiopian Bible has sparked controversy, and the existence of these two versions might contribute to its non-acceptance. The Ethiopian canon offers a fascinating lens through which to view the evolution of the Bible over the ages. Contrary to what many believe, the Bible is not a single book, but a compilation of various texts and narratives accumulated over centuries. This is where the fundamental issue lies. Different religious communities, even the established ones, have historically chosen to exclude or include certain texts based on theological or personal reasons. For instance, the version of the Bible familiar to us today was largely formulated in the 4th and 5th centuries AD. By then, the practice of Christianity in Ethiopia had already started to diverge from that in Europe and the Mediterranean region, and this divergence continues to widen even today. The Ethiopian Bible shares many similarities with the Catholic and Orthodox Bibles, though it includes additional Old Testament books that were likely written in the last few centuries BC, a period considered late in the timeline of the Old Testament, but prior to the start of the New Testament. Further books were appended to the end of the New Testament, detailing the history and organizational structure of the Ethiopian Church. Another factor contributing to the rejection of the Ethiopian Bible might be the language barrier, as it was originally written in Ge'ez, making it less accessible to non-speakers. Moreover, the scarcity of translations and the unique practices associated with the Ethiopian Bible have played roles in its limited recognition outside of Ethiopia. Political motives also pose a contentious reason. During the early Christian era, the Roman emperors prioritized political power over spiritual development. Thus, any scriptures that conflicted with their preferred narratives were excluded. Indeed, the Bishop of Rome instructed priests to destroy any non-canonical scriptures. Yet these priests cleverly concealed many of these texts in vats that were later discovered near the Dead Sea in the 1940s, shedding light on why the two versions of the Bible may differ, one being considered more complete than the other, which aligns more with human selection. Recently, however, there has been a resurgence of interest in the Ethiopian Bible, as scholars and believers alike seek to understand what sets it apart and uncover its truths. Ethiopian churches have been making concerted efforts to translate the Bible into more languages and promote scholarly studies to enhance its accessibility and understanding. I find it truly remarkable how this Bible has managed to withstand the test of time, surviving invasions by Muslim forces in Italy, and even a devastating fire in the 1930s that ravaged the monastery housing these sacred texts. Its survival through such trials only adds to the profound mystique surrounding this ancient book. As we conclude our exploration of the Ethiopian Bible and the rich traditions of Ethiopia, we have navigated a landscape where historically verified facts blend with cherished legends, each integral to the cultural and religious identity of this nation. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the past, and we hope this has enriched your understanding of Ethiopia's unique heritage.